Welcome to episode 118 of the omnigamersclub podcast, the podcast for games on all platforms, including stone skimming. I am Daniel Winter.
And this is Mark Yuasa. And this episode, we're happy to be joined by Tim from Board Game Hot Takes Podcast. Welcome, Tim. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you guys for having me. I'm actually a big fan of your show. I listen to it anytime I can, and I'm very excited to be a part of it this week. So thanks for having me on.
Likewise. Yeah, we are Board Game Hot Takes, so one of the other few podcasts out there who really gets into deep dives into one specific game. So I know something that we've gotten away from a little bit in our new format, but I've always appreciated that sort of multiple perspectives on one particular game, and also reviewing some older games over there too. I always appreciate. So yeah, big fans. Glad to have you on. Why don't you tell us first a little bit about Board Game Hot Takes just quickly?
Sure. Yeah. So we're a weekly podcast. We've just celebrated our 5-year anniversary, and we have not missed an episode. So I think this week's episode is like episode 267 every week. And we basically, it's three buddies. We get together every week, spend about an hour chatting about board games. Every couple episodes, we typically do what we call our hot take reviews, which is we play a game together, typically online because we all live in different places. And then we just talk about it. We talk about our experience with it, what we liked about it, what we didn't about the gameplay and the production, and how it made us feel, and whether we'd come back to it. And, one of the things about doing a hot take review is we don't feel like we're experts at the game, right? We don't feel like we could necessarily rank it, but we can tell you whether we are excited about it again after that first play. So I think that's, for me, I think that's valuable. But we do a lot of other stuff. We do top 5 lists. We've had some recent guest hosts on as well. And just kind of a variety show, as one of our listeners explained. Just love sitting and chatting about board games every week.
Really nice. I enjoyed your episode about, I think it was about casual gaming. The other day I listened to that, and that was nice. Like we do like kind of off-topic formats or like special topic formats every now and again, and it's fun to mix things up.
That was particularly special because that was my wife Danielle who joined us to talk about being a casual gamer. So she's graced us with her presence 3 times in the last 267 episodes. Otherwise, she just is nice enough to let me keep doing this. So.
Well, that's great to hear. I think while I was listening to it, I was thinking of my wife as well, and her position is very similar to yours. So, it made me think, we need to consider all the people in our lives who enjoy games and how to best share our interest with them.
Absolutely.
So that's really good.
Excellent. Well, I'm curious, Tim, obviously you talk a lot about board games, but where do you fall on the sort of omnigaming spectrum? Do you play a lot of other video games or TTRPGs on the side?
This is a great question because I had this poll question, I don't know, maybe several months back on our show about where you fall in the spectrum. And I said I consider myself an omnigamer, but my definition of omnigamer is clearly very different than your definition and some other people's. Because when I was talking about omnigamers, I was saying, I play a lot of different types of board games. But even in the board game hobby, a lot of people called me out and said, but wait a second, Tim, you don't play 18xx games and you don't play war games necessarily.
I listen to country and western.
That's so. To be frank, I have been a heavy video gamer in the past. I used to be a console gamer. I was a big PlayStation and Nintendo gamer through several generations. But about 10 years ago, my daughter, she's 13 right now. And so after she became a few years old, I just found it very hard to spend the time that I wanted to. Some of the last console games that I really got heavily into were games like Skyrim and Fallout 4 were a couple favorites of mine. I was a big, Super Mario, pretty much anything that was a Nintendo IP, I was playing those. But I just found them taking so much of my time away that I gave up my addiction, and I haven't really been playing console games for a long time. I occasionally will get hooked into an app game. Slay the Spire a few years ago was a big one for me. Yes. But otherwise, most of my digital gaming is digital adaptations of board games, and I typically do that when I'm traveling. So my in-flight entertainment oftentimes is an app game. But that's about the extent of my digital gaming, and I am not a fan of tabletop role-playing games at all. I know you guys are. It's fun to listen to your interests about it, but I don't think I have the creativity to engage in that particular hobby. I like a firm rule set. Tabletop role-playing games just don't give that to me. So I guess from your perspective, low on the omnigamer, the scale here.
No, not at all. We don't gatekeep here. I mean, hey, I personally thought myself not capable of role playing at all, somewhat. But I've started to find my way in sideways there. So there's a game for everyone, but not not you have to play any particular type.
Right,
But,
and there's crossover games in every genre, right? You mentioned board game or video game versions, computer versions of board games. I enjoy those a lot as well, especially when I can't get together in person with a group.
Yeah.
I find them like a great training device. But there's so many like video games that are an RPG crossover, or video games that are a board game crossover, or vice versa. They mix all these elements, and now video games are bringing in board game elements like Slay the Spire itself.
Yeah.
Where would that be without Dominion or Thunderstone or something like that, right?
I was talking about a digital trick-taking game that I was playing at the local video game convention this last weekend. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of innovation, cross-pollination back and forth, which is exciting to see.
Yeah, that's really cool to see, and also nice that video games can still bring in some elements that are very hard to accomplish on a tabletop. Some of the randomness. Slay the Spire did that really well, and of course they made a board game, Slay the Spire, the board game, and it has the randomness, but it adds a lot of fiddliness. Versus the computer will take care of that for you, and that's a nice thing about video games. Still something I don't know. My daughter, 4 more years, she'll be away at college. I might be back into that hobby a little bit. I think there's a lot to explore.
Maybe Elder Scrolls 6 will be up.
There you go.
Yeah, or you could do some co-op play, right? That's possible too. Awesome. All right. What about let's jump into some lighter fare. So on our show, I think you said you listened before, but we kind of have 3 courses, and we do a light little appetizer, just maybe something that interests you in the news or a new game that you're interested in from the future. Then we dive into our main topic, and then we do a nice little off-topic dessert. So as our guest of honor, Tim, do you have something you want to talk about for our appetizer?
Yeah, I think a game that you guys might find interesting. It is a board game. It's a tabletop game, but it was a little bit of a surprise to me this week. And I had never heard of this. This was apparently a Kickstarter from about a year or so back. And a friend of mine said, hey, I think I want to introduce you guys to Etherstone is the name of the game. And I was like, Etherstone, I've never heard of that. And then he sent me a little photo of the designers' names that were on the box cover. That's all he sent me. And I'm like, I'm in. This was designed by Simone Luciani and Virginio Gigli. These guys are the designers of 2 of my favorite games. They're on my top 10 list this year, Lorenzo Il Magnifico and Grand Austria Hotel. So it's like I love these Italian designers. These are just a couple of them. Of course, Simone Luciani's got his hands all over everything, including our featured game tonight, Barrage, that we're going to be talking about. But I had never heard of this game, and that surprised me a little bit. So he brought it over and kind of said, this is a Res Arcana inspired game. And I was like, okay, well, that gets me pretty excited because I like Res Arcana. I think, Mark, you said you're a fan of it as well.
Yeah, I am.
So
Played Res Arcana?
I love the mechanisms. I like Ton Lehman games. Let me just say, and that game just kind of I like the crunchiness of it, how all the pieces fit together. Daniel feels a bit different, but that's okay.
Well,
excited.
Who knows if Etherstone would be a better fit for you? But my buddy who brought it over, literally, he's like, Res Arcana never hit for me. And so when I heard about this and heard about the designers, I was like, I want to try this and see if it works better for me than Etherstone. This is him talking than Res Arcana. And personally, I like Res Arcana just fine. I do find it has a little bit of clunkiness to it, but I keep wanting to go back to it. And so Etherstone is an interesting mix. It's clearly inspired by Res Arcana. Res Arcana, of course, is a game where you basically start the game with 8 cards in your hand. And if you're playing an advanced version of it, you draft those cards at the beginning of the game. Everybody takes one, you pass it around until everybody's got 8 cards. And then that's your entire deck. But you start with 3 cards in your hand. And then over the course of the game, you spend resources to play the cards. You can activate the cards to get more resources. And then ultimately, you're trying to buy these valuable point pieces of your engine in the middle of the game, in the middle of the board, that everyone can get these places of power. So that's the gist of Res Arcana, right? If you've never played it, it gives you just a little bit of a picture of what it's about. And I think that's really useful because anyone who plays Res Arcana is going to get more value out of this discussion about Etherstone because it's so similar. The way Etherstone works is at the start of the game, you draft 7 cards. So everybody's going to start with 7 cards. And the difference with Res Arcana is that you don't only draw 3 at the start of your turn. You just have that whole 7 cards in your hand. But otherwise, it's pretty similar. It's very like quick, just very small turns where you're either just getting resources or you're playing a card. And then a lot of the cards kind of combo off of each other. They trigger off of each other. But some kind of unique differences. Number one is that aside from playing a card, this is a dice drafting game. So in the middle of the game, there are 5 colors of dice, 4 unique ones that kind of represent different elements, and then a purple one that is like a wild. It can represent any element. So if you can't play a card, you will typically draft one of these dice, and it gives you 2 resources of the color that you just picked the dice of, and you're going to use those resources, these shards, to play. I think they're the Etherstones, but you use these little resources to basically play the cards you're going to play. The other cool thing, though, that happens with that dice draft is that, of course, when there's a reset and those dice are rolled, they're random numbers. These are D6s, right? So they're going to be a 1 through 6. And many of the cards that you've played out in front of you will trigger off of certain numbers of dice. So it adds another kind of cool element to, like, I've got this card.
Going on?
Yeah, maybe a little bit, right? It's very it's very much more tactical than that. Like, you may only trigger one of these dice cards a couple times during the course of the game, because you have to want to draft that particular dice. It has to match up with the numbers on your card, etc. But it's just one more little piece of the puzzle that you're trying to put together here. But ultimately, what's happening is you're playing these cards, you're trying to combo them together, and then you can defeat these threats. So one of the instead of just spending resources to buy the place of power like you do in Res Arcana, you're getting power to essentially combat threats, and then threats will get damaged. And if you can destroy one, you get some special effects and you get end game points for it, but they can damage your character back. And just like Res Arcana, at the start of the game, you pick from one of 2 characters that have unique abilities, but they also have life counters on them, almost like a Magic the Gathering type of situation where you start with a certain amount of life and you can be damaged over the course of the game.
Yeah, I'm looking at the artwork and I'm getting the vibes of that game, Ashes from Black Hat Games. Have you ever tried that one out?
Ashes Reborn. I have not tried it. Yeah, but maybe, I mean, since I haven't played it, I guess I don't want to say that it's a similar type of game.
Yeah, I'm sure it's different, but it has a nice balance of dice interactions with card effects.
Okay.
I really enjoyed that one.
Cool.
Yeah, reading through the blurb of this, I'm really surprised I hadn't heard of it either. Between the designers and Thundergriff, who, I've played Darwin's Journey, we talked about recently.
Yeah.
I've gotten, not all of their games are hits, but they're always beautiful, at the very least. Lovely production value. And yeah, I love Simone Luciani's work. So I'm curious how this plays. It's the artwork is like this really beautiful, ethereal, science fantasy vibes.
Well, that's the first thing I want to call out, because that's probably the most special thing about the game. The artwork is done by Paolo Vodo, and the only other thing I could find him credited for, at least that I was familiar with, is Darwin's Journey. So this is the artist for Darwin's Journey, but it looks nothing like the artwork in Darwin's Journey. No. So if you, until I looked him up, I was like, I have no idea what this guy did, but when I saw Darwin's Journey, I was like, that doesn't feel like the same artist at all. But anyway, yeah, it's a kind of a dark sci-fi / fantasy type of artwork. Very cool. I mean, like, every single card was amazing to look at. A little bit maybe kind of gruesome or creepy at times, but
I was thinking it could look a little distracting from like the pertinent information on the card, perhaps. Like, there's almost too much art going on there.
Yeah, maybe. And the other thing about these cards, which is I think a nice comparison to Res Arcana, is that there's a lot of text on a lot of these cards as well. They're in a way, it's quite complex. There's a lot of things that each of the cards could do, and they could do different. And there's quite a few different keywords that you could end up triggering on them and stuff like that. But otherwise, it actually feels a lot like Res Arcana. The turns are pretty quick and simple. You're basically just racing for these end game points, and whoever, instead of just getting to 10 points like you do in Res Arcana, in this one, if I remember right, I think it's like when you destroy the last threat, and then one has to be drawn off the card, off the pile, and I think there might be some other end game condition. I can't remember what it is, but basically it triggers about the same amount of playtime, and then you count up the points that people have collected, and that's the winner. So just 2 really quick comparisons, and for your sake especially, Mark, since you're a fan of Res Arcana. Number 1, the draft is much more exciting in Etherstone, because I think the draft exists. I think the draft exists in Res Arcana for the purpose of balancing each player's decks that they've drafted. In this game, the intent of the draft is to try to find like broken combos and put them together, and that can be really fun. And the game's short enough where that's okay. If one person manages to pull a few cards together and make like this awesome combo, then it's just fun to watch that. So I will tell you that part was really exciting. And the gameplay itself was fine. And then I got to the end and I was like, I'm ready to draft again. Let's do this one more time because I just want to see if I can draft better this time around. So that was that was really cool. The other part about from a comparison though, is that like I mentioned, it's a bit more complex. There's a lot more wordiness to the cards and things like that. And I'm not sure that meant more fun. So like my friend asked me at the end of the gameplay, he's like, so does this kill Res Arcana for you? And I was like, I don't think so. I think Res Arcana feels just more approachable. It feels just kind of more sophisticated and just easier to play. But I only played this once, so I'm definitely excited to go back to it and try it a few more times and see if it really starts to get its hooks into me. But I don't know. It was a cool evolution a little bit.
That sounds great. I love the concept of collectible trading card games and dueling card games, but I can't get into like the business model of actual CCGs like Magic the Gathering. But what you described about the the excitement that comes from drafting cards, like that is the original drafting game, right?
Yeah.
Way before Sushi Go and way before Seven Wonders, there was actually Magic the Gathering. And well, obviously people still do it now and drop a ton of cash every weekend to get those booster packs. But if I can get it all in one box and it's enjoyable over and over and over again, I can play it with some buddies around a table. That sounds fantastic to me.
Well, and that was the thing about this game is that I used to be a Magic the Gathering player, and I was a limited player. I played for years in the tournament scene, and I just loved the drafting aspect of it. And I've gone back to a lot of board games that have drafting, Blood Rage and Seven Wonders and many others, but none of them have quite hit for me with the excitement of how cool that draft was. That was kind of the most exciting part of the game, and then you got to play it. And I do think that Etherstone delivered from that aspect. Like I think this was probably the best board game in a box that kind of made me feel like the old Magic the Gathering draft. One last interesting thing I think about this is that they clearly, I think Simone Luciani and Virginia Gigli clearly were inspired by Res Arcana. And if I was to imagine that I was sitting there at the meeting where they discussed this, they said, hey, Res Arcana is a cool game. Let's see what we can do. Let's see if we can adapt it and make our own version of this. And they also did, I think, or at least Luciani did with Anunnaki Dawn of the Gods. If you play that game, I don't know if you guys are familiar with it.
No.
But I got a chance to play it last year, and it is basically a Scythe clone. If you guys have ever played the Stonemaier game Scythe, it's like somebody said, they played Scythe and they said, this was really neat. Let's see what we can do to put our own spin on it. And it almost feels like they did the same thing here. And so it's kind of neat. It's kind of cool to see some designers who have like built plenty of original games, and they kind of riff off their own game designs a lot, kind of take some mechanisms from every game, put a little bit in the next one. So it's kind of neat to see them riffing on other designers' game concepts and putting their own spin on it. So far, I wouldn't say that those are their most exceptional games that they've produced, but they're fun to try, and I would try more of them if they did more of that.
The tricky thing about these games, like with Magic the Gathering, is when you have these cards that all have like walls of text that all interacting, comboing with each other, you either need to have a really elegant rule system that's going to be intuitive, or you need to have a really thick guide to like all of the side cases and fringe rules that can come up and like the glossary basically of every card interaction. So how did Etherstone manage that, do you think?
Not too bad. It was a decent, it was like a little bit heavier teach than Res Arcana for our friend to kind of explain the rules before we started the draft, because that's a risk of a draft game, right? You have to kind of know what you're looking for before you give everybody a handful of cards and say pick the best choices. But they did have some nice like keywords that reference, so every card would have types on it, for example, and then classes or whatever. There's a couple different categories or attributes that they would print on every card, and so some of them would literally be, if you play one of these cards, then trigger this ability. And so I knew that after I drafted my first card, or after I had the choice of two characters to pick from at the beginning of the game, that I was kind of watching for some specific keywords. And I think that would just get easier. But certainly after looking at a few cards, going going through my first hand and then the first hand that was passed to me, I was starting to get it. Now I failed miserably. Like I put together the worst, like I did the worst draft there because I kept getting pulled in different directions. Oh, that card wants me to do this. Let me start looking for that thing. And then by the end, I had nothing that worked together, which was partly why I wanted to go back to it. But I do think it actually kept the rule set simple enough to make that pretty approachable.
That is the curse with draft. I just want all the cool cards. I don't care how they interact. I just want this cool card and this cool card and this cool card. Excellent. Yeah, I'm excited to try that sometime.
Super cool. All right. If it's all right, I'm going to move on into my topic. Mine is going to be really short. I just wanted to give a quick update on, I mentioned the Cypher TTRPG system is having a crowdfunding campaign an episode or two ago. I just wanted to give an update that not only has my favorite setting in that system, The Strange, been funded if you're part of the PDF or the print all-in package. I'm part of the PDF one. Another setting called Predation, which is by another Monte Cook Games alum, Shanna Germain, is also back now, so it's included. And it's basically, do any of you guys, are you old enough to remember a TV show from the 80s called Dino Riders?
I do remember Dino Riders. There was like toys for that too, right? I vaguely remember.
Absolutely, there were.
Yeah,
there was a show. There were toys for it.
Yeah,
if you can imagine dinosaurs with weapon emplacements
Yep.
plugged on them, and you riding them. I thought that was pretty cool. How about you, Tim?
Yeah. I mean, I don't remember it super well. There was so many toy-focused animated shows in the 80s that I was kind of drawn in all different directions. But I do remember seeing those toys on the shelves, and I'm pretty sure I watched an episode or two at least. It wasn't one of my favorites, but I do remember being drawn to it.
Yeah, what can get better for like a little kid at that age? And I was reminded of the TV show that did it. There was like a TV show that lasted for like one season in 2011 called Terra Nova, where like refugees from the future went back into the past because they were escaping their like environmentally devastated world, and they went back to dinosaur times because that's super smart. What's a safer place to go than dinosaur times? There's a reason it lasted only a season, I guess. So that happened. And then what beyond that? I just wanted to say that this past week there was a Steam sale for two quirky indie games that we've covered in the past. One of them was for the kind of Canadian set immigration themed generational trauma themed game Venba, which is also about cooking. It's a very multifaceted game. That one was on sale this past week, as was Card Shark, the game about games of chance that we covered just last episode. So that was happening out there on Steam.
Very cool. Excellent. Okay, well, jumping to my appetizer, and in honor of Tim's hot takes, I wanted to talk about how we approach hot takes and our initial impressions of games. Obviously, over on the podcast there, Tim, you talk about your first impression. Obviously, that's a very important one. So many games in our collections never get past that first play. But I'm curious about how we overcome that in terms of when do we give games another chance, how our impressions change over time. Partly in honor of Barrage, which we'll be talking about soon, because when I first played that, I did not get on with it at all. Suffice to say, my opinion has changed quite a bit now. So, Tim, why don't you kick us off there? I'm curious about your thoughts on first impressions.
Sure. So, well, we actually got a count recently of how many games that we did a hot take review on. And again, this is where we feature a game on the episode after literally just playing it. Now, all of these weren't played for the first time before we had that discussion, but many of them were. And so I was thinking back on that. I was reflecting on it a little bit. We've done 130 hot take review episodes. And we actually did an episode about a year and a half ago called Wrong Hot Takes, where we kind of looked back at the first 3 years of our show and said, which games did we play we had a strong first opinion on, and then our opinions changed after we had a chance to revisit it again. And there certainly are some. Like, don't get me wrong, you're not going to know everything a game has to offer at the beginning. But what I found, and I was a little surprised by, was that more of my hot takes were wrong about being too positive about a game versus being negative about a game. Meaning
both ways.
Yeah. So meaning, like, typically what would happen is I'd play a game, I'd be like, this has some really cool stuff. But what more often than not happens is I would go back and revisit it, and after a couple more plays, be like, cool, this stuff is not, I'm not getting new things out of it. Like it's gone tired pretty quickly. You know, it doesn't keep that freshness, that excitement.
There definitely is this there definitely is this trend in board games right now to design a game for the first play, to try and hook people in, and then you've basically seen everything there is to see in that one game, and there's not much further to go.
Yeah, that's a really disappointing trend, to be honest, because I personally think that like these games are, you know, there's so much that goes into them. There's so much that goes into the artwork and the production and the design, that these are things that you should be revisiting, and that they should be made to be played over and over again. And I've heard this topic from a couple designers that said that from their understanding, most people play a board game one time today, a hobby board game one time, and then it never gets played again. And I think that's such a letdown. That to be said, any game that I've ever had negative feelings about the first play of it, I have not yet gone back to it and then fallen in love with the game like you did with Barrage so far. But in all reality, there's a good chance that if I really disliked a game the first play, I'm probably not going to give it a second shot. So that doesn't mean to say that it couldn't happen. One example is SETI, which is obviously a super popular game from last year. It's been shooting up the BGG top 100 list. I think it's sitting at like number 32 right now. And it was a perfectly fine game, but it wasn't, to me, an exceptional game. Like I didn't really have any interest in going back and revisiting it, but so many people are excited about it. I do want to go back and try that one. So that's one I'm definitely going to be watching to see if my opinion changes on it. But yeah, I don't know. It's obviously, it's something that we look at critically all the time and think about, and we get criticism about it. Like, why, you know, what are these guys doing given the review on a game after they played it one time? Logistics, that's why we have to do it, for one thing. But honestly, there is some value to it as well. As we talked about, a lot of people get to play a game one time, they'll never play it again. If it doesn't resonate on the first play, there's a good chance it won't get another shot like Barrage did for you.
Well, at least you're very clear about it. It's in the title of your show. It's going to be hot takes, and I guess it's kind of like a service, right? Like a public service. Lots of legitimate, you know, game journalism outlets do like previews, right? It's like giving you an impression. This is how you're feeling off the bat. You haven't played, you know, 12 games or whatever, but this is honestly how you feel. How can they blame you for that?
Yeah, that's, I mean, I hope so. I hope I hope people find the value in it to some extent.
Yeah, and I've always found that it's useful to sort of internalize why you're not gelling with the game. Like Barrage, for example, when I first played that, I just sort of sensed that I didn't really internalize the rules, that my understanding of those rules affected how I enjoyed the game. And so when I then went and read through the rules myself and was able to better internalize it and wrap my head around it. And sometimes, like when I play games at a convention, I never let my first impressions at a convention sort of be set in stone, because I know there's so many distractions and like overstimulation going on that it's just not giving it's never going to be a fully focused gameplay session. Like Spirit Island, I seem to recall playing at a convention, and like it's such a heavy game. Your mind is being pulled in so many different directions. It's just not really the right atmosphere for it.
It's funny. We actually, the episode of this coming out tomorrow for us. This is going to be released on 9/22. But it's about the three of us. So me and my two co-hosts, twice a year, we get together for 5 days of gaming. And this one happened to be up in Oregon. So we all got together in person, played games for 5 days. And we're releasing the episode that talks about the first half of that con. And one of my co-hosts, Chris, he mentioned, you know, he was talking about a game that didn't really hit for him. And he's like, but it happened to be about 2:00 in the afternoon. We'd had lunch, and every day I feel this lull of like just not really being as engaged, not as excited about the gaming. And so he's like, I'm going to give that one a pass because maybe I would enjoy it more if we played it at a different time of the day. So there's a lot of outside things that can influence your feelings about a game. I think one of the things I do think that at least our show accomplishes there is that it's three of us. And so oftentimes we just, you know, we hit with games in different ways. And some of it might be because, you know, a complex rule set, one of us picks up right away and can kind of like run with it and have really positive feelings. And then one of us might kind of like that first play is always a little bit rougher, but at least you get to hear a couple different opinions and why it didn't work. So I think if I was doing it solo and just giving my own opinion, I definitely would feel less satisfied with the outcome of that. But yeah, Daniel, I mean, it's a great point about Barrage and how, or like Spirit Island, you were saying at a con, how it's just, there's so much else going on. You know, it's hard to judge something like that on a first play with all those other outside influences.
But it's tough to decide too. When do you give a game another chance?
Yeah.
And who has time to play a game 3 times just in case? You never know. Like the other
Well,
game
yeah.
that I had written off that I didn't like because of a bad rules teach was Andromeda's Edge. Mark and I recently replayed that again, and it turns out I still don't like that game. So my opinion has not changed.
This is maybe the third time I've tried to learn Barrage, and obviously failed to learn it by myself. Usually because I refuse to read the rules and I just fiddle about on BGA and screw myself over. Then I got taught by a friend, and that teach didn't go very well, and I was still confused. The third time around, Daniel taught me properly, so that is a good thing. In my opinion of it has improved. I'll tell you all about it in the main segment. But this brought up the question of a phenomenon. We talked about hot takes. You're failing after the first game. Quite often, complex games require 1 or 2 sacrificial games, as in you have to play and lose the first time around. Especially, this reminds me of my first time playing the Uwe Rosenberg game Le Havre. So the first time I played that, people told me, "Oh, you better not play that. Oh, you better not play that with that guy Serge, because he's like a professional poker player, uber genius. You're gonna get your board wiped. You're gonna get a terrible time of it." And true to form, I was terrible, last place. But over time, over multiple plays, I came to like that game. But in this climate of only being able to play games once or twice, will games survive those necessary sacrificial plays?
Speaking of Uwe Rosenberg, I'm reminded of relatively early in the hobby, someone taught me Agricola. Then they had the fully blinged out version. This is like the first edition before all the enemy pools. They'd sourced their own enemy pools and gotten all the bits and taught me the game, and then just like abandoned me. Like it's like giving a baby a shovel and like, here, go build a farm. And I starved 3 times over that game, I think. And it was just, I didn't really understand what I was doing. The rules were explained to me, but they weren't, like, the implications of those rules weren't really explained. So it's just tricky, especially when so many of these games are building upon other, like, sort of this pre-assumed knowledge of other games. Like, you have to work your way up to them sometimes.
Yeah. Well, I think it's our responsibility as the hobbyists, especially in our friend groups, and we're drawing people in and we're the ones that are introducing our friends to the hobby, is to really hold their hands and be gentle with them. I taught 3 new players Scythe yesterday, and I lost 4th place miserable. I played that game somewhere around 75 times, but it's because I was really trying to make sure that everybody else kind of knew what they could do and stuff like that. And I'm fine with that. They all enjoyed the game, and that was a win from my perspective. So, that was a big miss, Daniel, by your friends that taught you Agricola and then said, just run with it. And likewise, Mark, I think the point about losing on a first game, again, it's something I think you kind of have to expect, especially with heavier games. If you're getting in, if you're playing with people, even if I'm playing with a bunch of people for the first time, I have to recognize that I'm kind of feeling my way blindly through the strategy of the game. I'm doing my best, but I don't take it too personally or feel like an idiot if I just don't do well on a first play. But give me that second play. If the mechanisms are fun to me, if the puzzle's fun, then I'm willing to like go after that game again. And then that second play is when I get to really explore the strategy. So yeah, I 100%. First game in a heavy strategy game, we're always like, learning game. No big deal. Even if somebody taught a rule wrong or we misunderstood something, no big deal. Everyone's pretty chill about it. They're like, okay, learning game. Next time I got you. We're gonna have some real competition on that one.
Yeah, I recall early on in the hobby when I was getting into it, or when I was really, motivated to bring other people into the hobby. I remember, like, quite often, like, playing like half of a game and be like, and we could end it right here and start over. This is just our tutorial. We played
Practice
like
rounds.
3 or 4 rounds. Then let's start up with a real game. Let's see how it goes. And that actually goes over fairly well with most groups.
Oftentimes that first game is just like pulling levers, pressing buttons just to see what happens. And I found that the game that leaves the best first impression is one that leaves you feeling like there's more to master. Like if you end the game, you've maxed out every track and you've hit the top of the VP track on your first game, you feel like there's not really much more to see here. Whereas games like maybe Barrage, which we've been talking about, first games like I generated a single energy this game. Obviously, I can do better next time, and gives you something to work towards.
Yeah, 100% on that. Like if a game just lets you do really, really well, if everybody does amazingly on the first game and there's nothing else to accomplish, that is not very satisfying. But a game where you start to just feel the tinge of like, okay, I could see where that can go, or I just did this one really cool thing in the game and that left me happy, even if my points don't reflect a positive outcome there. 100% agree with you on that.
We've trickled out some teasers as to our main course, so maybe we should release the dams and talk about our main topic.
Let it all wash over us. All right, so you're going to get a lot of puns this episode, let me tell you. It's not going to be a dry affair here. So, as Tim teased, we are going to be covering a 2019 game called Barrage. Some people I've heard call it Barrage. I'm pretty sure it's Barrage. But by designers Tommaso Battista and the aforementioned Simone Luciani. And there's some more artists in tow. Do you want to tackle those, Daniel?
Yes, the art is by Mauro Allucci, Antonio De Luca, and Roman Roland Kutenikov. Published by Crenio Creations in 2019. And so just to be clear, we're all going to be discussing this as one game. We've ordered the big share plate of nachos. We're just going to talk about Barrage today, I think, unless I don't think we're going to run short. I think we'll have
plenty to talk about for sure. So, Tim, as the guest of honor, would you like to tell us, just generally about the game, like what genre is this? Kind of where does this sit? What type of board game is this?
Yeah, so Barrage is a fairly heavy strategy game. It is in the Euro, it's in the Euro category for sure. And literally because it's designed by some Italian designers. And these guys, by the way, if you're interested at all in Barrage, go look up these designers because they've designed dozens of really, really fantastic, some of my favorite board games. So Barrage, the core mechanism of it is really worker placement. And I'm sure most of your listeners are familiar with worker placement, but the idea being that you are choosing what type of action you can take by taking little worker meeples, little components, and covering over spaces on a shared board and taking the action that's relevant to that. This game is a little bit unique in that everybody starts with, I think it's like maybe 12 15 meeples. Yeah. It's quite a few. But most of the action spaces take more than one meeple to activate, so more than one worker. So you might have to commit 1, 2, even up to 3 meeples, I think is probably the max. And then some of those spaces will also require you to pay extra coins to activate the space as well. So it is a very tight economy. If I take a space that does a particular action on the board, for example, to purchase a contract, the next person might be able to take that space, but they might have to pay additional meeples or money to activate it. So if you're the first one to one of the action spaces, you're more likely going to get it cheaper. But what are you doing in this game? The main goal is to build this infrastructure that allows you to capture water as it's running down this mountain, and then basically capture it in your dams, and then try to create power by triggering it through your generators. And so aside from the central board where everybody's kind of placing these workers and getting things like contracts or going to the bank and getting money, there's also, everybody has on their own board 3 spaces where they can put meeples and then actually essentially trigger this action wheel that's in front of them. And so what they do is they take one of the action wheel segments that they want to trigger, they put it in their in this little kind of wheel that's on their local board, and then they place the number of resources that wheel requires. I think it's concrete mixers and excavators are the 2 type of resources that you spend here. But it's kind of clever because instead of just spending those resources and they're gone forever, they go into this wheel segment and then it moves 1 space. And then you do what that action segment told you to do, which is usually to build a dam, either a 1st, 2nd, or 3rd level dam, or build a power generation station that will then take the water from that dam and convert it into energy. There's a couple of components you can build with it. Ultimately, as you've built more and more segments around this wheel, those concrete mixers and excavators that you put in there will come back up to the top, and then they're available for you to use again. So in another way that it's a very tight economy in that you don't have a lot of these things. It's hard to get those back around and kind of make them available to use again. But as you're building these segments on the shared map, these dams and stuff like that, you're trying to catch the water that's coming down from the top. And every round, there's some water seated at the top of each of these 4 columns. And so you know what water is going to be coming down every round of the game. You're trying to capture that water, convert it into energy. Energy will result in points, as well as some basically bonuses that you can get from fulfilling contracts and things like that. But it's very competitive, because if I place a dam out there to catch water, you could potentially place a dam right above me and catch the water before it gets to me, and you can route it through another generator that completely misses my dam. So there's a lot of competition. You can build up some infrastructure, and then somebody else can basically steal that entire piece from you. And I'm sure we'll be talking a little bit more about that. But that's the general gist of what Barrage is. Listen, I live in the West here in the United States, and we're all fighting over water here. This game represents that, and I think in a pretty realistic way.
I mean, on the other hand, we're living in BC here, where pretty much hydroelectricity is like our whole life. Like everything is hydro here, so we're well familiar with that. Yeah, thanks, Tim, for that overview. I wanted to start off quickly with the setting, because I don't think there's a lot to discuss there, partly in that, in theory, this is like an alternate history, almost like Scythe. It's like not quite sort of Tesla punk, I guess, like these giant Tesla coil towers and things that you see on the box cover, alternate history, like nations' leaders as your various factions. I don't know that it really comes across in the game necessarily. Like the fact that you're building dams is absolutely evocative, but the fact that it's alt history Tesla dams doesn't really come across, to be honest.
It's pretty painted on. I mean, I think you're supposed to play. I don't know if you're actually really real world historical figures, but you do play named individuals from real European countries. You kind of have like a leader, a primary leader, and then you kind of have like this like lackey or something that helps give you an extra special ability. Yeah. So that's kind of cool. What do you think about the theme, Tim? I think it's a little pasted on, if I may agree with Daniel.
I totally agree. It doesn't super come through, except for that your resources are these like what look like robots. These excavators and these concrete mixers are basically like walking engines. And so in my mind canon, it's exactly in the world of Scythe. This is supposed to be in the 1920s, 1930s. It's got a cool Art Deco presence to it. Just there's not a lot of it, right? There's not a lot of artwork,
very
but the
brutalist, oppressive art style.
Yeah, the box cover and the pictures of the paintings of the characters that you're representing, the asymmetric factions. You get a little hint of that, and that's enough for me. In this game, I think it works okay. I think the focus of the game is building up these cool structures around the board, and so just I think knowing that's how it feels. I could get into that a little bit, but yeah, it could probably be any era. They could have done it in a realistic. It didn't have to be an alternate history. I'm sure they could have found a way to represent that in a different way. But I like the little flavor that comes with it.
They wanted to spice up the dry theme a little bit somehow. Yeah, it's funny because, like you said, you're from the West. California. Obviously, water rights is a big deal there with the heat and the droughts. But other places like the Nile River Basin has been dealing with water rights for millennia. Obviously, in the Indian subcontinent with the Ganges, and then in China we have water rights. So this is kind of a universal issue that we're dealing with. But I wonder where in the world is this actually set? Because how are these rivers and dams so beautifully lined up, and they can so easily be diverted?
Waterworld, Mark.
Yeah, I know the board isn't to scale. I just think it's pretty hilarious, especially when some of the conduits have your water.
All the nations having dams in one spot, crisscross. I don't know. It's strange.
Right.
But yeah,
okay.
I think perhaps we should get to the heart of the mechanics here and these dams and structures that you are building. I think this is the real crux of understanding the rules and trying to internalize it, is that you have these basically 3 different types of buildings. You've got the dams itself, the bases, and then the sort of elevations that capture the water. Mm-hmm. You've got these conduits that help you funnel the water through pipes, and then you've got these power stations that help you use that water to generate energy. And to do anything in this game, to generate any amount of energy, to move that water, you have to have all 3 of those constituent parts. There are some rules as to whether they need to be yours or neutral or someone else's. It's a little bit different for each structure. And I think that's the real that's what I really struggle with, and I think most people will is trying to wrap their head around how those interact with each other, basically.
Yeah, it's a multi-step process, and you have to know how all the parts fit together before you can have any hope of succeeding in this game. And that's what really tripped me up early in the beginning. I knew that conduits sort of help you divert water, and basically you can utilize one of your conduits. Other players can utilize your conduits, but they have to pay you for the privilege of doing so. And then you want to divert them to your power stations, because that's how when you run the turbines, then you can convert that water into energy. Energy roughly equates into points, and you have to do that every round. But I got a little bit tripped up in well, how do the dams work? Because some of the dams are mine, some are yours, and depending on the number of players, sometimes there's kind of neutral dams, aren't they? And then anyone can pull from those. So actually, can either of you answer, can I utilize the water from someone else's dam?
You cannot. No. You can you can use them from the generic dams or from your own dams, but you can use other people's conduits, but you pay them money if you use their conduits, which is kind of an interesting strategy in this game, is that you can see somebody setting up infrastructure. You can just drop a conduit right in there, right where they need to use it, and then they don't have to build it, but you're going to be getting money throughout the course of the game. I think better players than me seem to do that frequently. Personally, I build stuff for myself. It hasn't worked out for me so far. What's interesting is that you guys are talking about how it's hard to wrap your head around these kind of rules. What's hard for me in this game is actually doing anything. Getting anything done in the game is just so hard to do. It feels like you can build one or two components, and then it's a struggle to figure out how to get your resources back and actually get to that next component. So it does come with there's a lot more to be said about that, but I gotta say that on a first play, be prepared. This is not going to be a game that you just easily do these things. Everything feels like a struggle to get done.
Maybe this is a commentary on interdepartmental bureaucracy, having to follow all of these mandates and permits and this and that. No, but jokes aside, it is a bit hard because this game, unlike a lot of dry Euro strategy games, has a lot of player interaction. There's a lot of half of the game is tripping up the other players, taking advantage of the other player's position, and that's another thing that's hard for novice players. You have to be able to recognize and pinpoint the precise position where among dozens where you should build a conduit, or now you should build a dam base, or now you should build a power station. It's really hard to know, even though there's really only those three parts, where and when, and then having the right kind of moment to do so. That tripped me up, but I guess the way you do it is you see other people doing it. You see that once they get all those components set up, and you have to take that literal action to leverage the turbines, and that's the only way you can trigger and convert the water into energy. It doesn't happen passively, and that's another hard thing because you have to time things to make it happen.
There's this real sense of delayed gratification in this game. To do anything, you have to build these three parts of the dam engine, but you might need to take several more actions to get the mixers in order to build those. By the time you've done all of that, someone else may have just built another dam above yours and started siphoning up your energy. That's assuming they didn't just block you entirely and drop a conduit in on the engine that you're trying to build. And there's this real fascinating sense of all the different types of interaction and different types of aggression you can get in this game, because people, like I said, people can just plop a dam above you. They can put the conduit to try and get you to pay them money and points. They can set up a dam sort of where your outflow is. If you're pumping water through to a different basin adjacent, they can set up their dam there and sort of try and capitalize on your work. So you get this really weird mix of sort of parasitic and symbiotic relationships going on here. Sometimes it's just like Daniel Day-Lewis, I drink your milkshake. It's super aggressive. But it's really fascinating blend of dynamics you get in the interaction here.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever cursed as much while playing this game. I literally this game frustrated me so much on the first play. But the reason being that like you said, I mean, you can spend your entire first round, and I think it's played over 5 rounds, but you can spend your entire first round building up the infrastructure to hopefully, and maybe not even produce any energy in the first round, but hopefully you capture some water droplets and you get to produce a little bit of energy in the second round. But right when you think you're set up to do that, and you've invested everything into it. Someone drops that dam above you and they route all the water somewhere else. And when I read about this game and I first heard about it and I heard about how all these interactions happen, I was like, there's no way I'm going to like this game. This game sounds terrible. It sounds miserable. And it kind of can be, except then the game gives me the thing that I love in a great Euro game, and it gives me bonuses. And it does that in a way that says, even if I'm building infrastructure, even if I don't get to capitalize on it, even if I never run a droplet through there, I'm still getting bonuses by just building those things. And it's not even just a one-time bonus for building that middle dam section. It's also, I get it every income. And so it starts to become like, okay, you know what, that was a lot of work and it was kind of painful that someone got in my way, but I'm still getting this benefit and I'm setting myself up for the next bonus that's going to come. So somehow the game manages to walk that balance of like, it's super mean, but also it's okay. I still got something done. I still feel like I accomplished something, even though somebody really got in my way.
So similar to what you're describing, Tim, is similar to the game Scythe. You start with all of the parts that you're going to have in the game on your personal board, and as you take actions and spend the necessary resource, the diggers or the excavators or whatever, you pick up the wooden pieces off of your board and you place them on the main board, and then that, depending on how many you have built of the different categories, because they're all kind of in a row, conduits, bases, power stations, depending on how many you build, you'll reveal those bonuses, and some of them are immediate, and then some are repeated bonuses that you earn throughout the game. So that's obviously, we're board game players. That's naturally like catnip, or a little bit of the inspiration we need to take those actions.
There's not much immediate gratification in this game. You got to take it where you can get it. But when you do finally like generate 2 energy and complete a contract, you feel like you earned that bonus so much. Like, because when you generate energy, there's these contracts that you can get that will have basically a threshold, whether it's 2 or 5 or 7 energy. If you complete that, then you can basically, it will be a little small bonus. It might be points, it might be gold, it might be some additional mixes for your engine. Sometimes it's a free building, and so it's really like the only way to really succeed in this is to be really clever in how you combo. Like, you can spend a whole round generating one little engine to generate some water, but then combo that into a reward that will sort of cascade into your next sort of little engine. And you're constantly trying to move the battlefield before, as everyone else is constantly trying to one-up you, and you have to be ready to move to a new like basin yourself.
And of course, you have to take an action to collect those contracts as well.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
That's one of the many actions you can take on the board. Another one is that you can take an action to move those kind of rondelle slices that have your workers and tools on them. And then I think obviously the powering of the turbines is one of those actions as well. And what's the other one along the bottom?
Well, there's a really painful one, and that's the bank. And that one says you get 1 coin for every worker you place there. So if you want 4 coins,
when you go there, right?
Yeah, I know, right? Spend 4 workers, but sometimes you have to, and sometimes it's the right move to do it. But it feels so painful because 1 coin for a full worker, that's rough. Now, have you guys played the advanced mode where you can actually purchase additional action tiles for your?
Yes. Oh yeah. The patent office.
Yeah. So that's obviously a pretty critical piece if you're playing with that module in it as well. And I think it's, after a first play, definitely an exciting part of the game, because you start to get asymmetric building abilities. So like when you're building a component, it might give you some extra bonus or might allow you to trigger something in a way that you couldn't normally. That gets really fun, I think, if you can get that added in.
I can definitely see this game being one of those where, like, people have sort of mathed out, well, if you have this faction and this CEO, then you have to grab this particular, like, building that combos really well. And, like, I have not gotten that deep into it. I've largely just been making up as I go, probably why I keep losing this game. But there is a lot of opportunity to, like, that higher level combo, especially with some of those asymmetric powers, some of those powerful buildings that come out over the course of the game.
Yeah, I think that's actually one of my biggest negatives about this game. And it's not a negative. I mean, it depends on who you are and what you're trying to play. But I really like games that at least allow new people that are getting into the game an opportunity to succeed, or succeed reasonably well. This is one of those games where if you know the game, you could almost take scripted actions. Like I know people that are really good at this game, and I don't like to play with them very much, but that they will know, okay, the first action I'm going to take is go to the patent office, that one tile showing, I'm grabbing it. And I'm going to abuse that tile the whole time. And this game really it rewards repeat plays for sure. It rewards advanced play. Not my favorite, because I like to play with a variety of people, and I like to be able to introduce new people to some of my favorite games. This is a game that I have a hard time feeling good about introducing someone to after I kind of really know how the strategy is coming along.
You have to have a pretty good teach, like nailed down to explain it to people, and it can be incredibly punishing. I mean, Mark has seen from experience. Like we played last night on Board Game Arena. On the first round, I plopped down a powerhouse in the wrong basin. Like the next turn, I realized, oh, that was following the wrong pipe, and I was basically playing catch up for the rest of the game, and I nearly caught up, but by the end I think Mark did bring that one home. But like it is hard to read the board state. Even just internalizing the rules is one thing, but because these basins sort of the pipes crisscross, they don't flow intuitively. The pipes will sort of pump the water up and across to a different basin and back and forth, and it's really hard to look at the game state and see who's pumping what where at a glance.
This game is an interesting kind of commentary on playing in person, analog, and virtually online, because. To the credit of the game, everyone should know I have not played this game in person. I've only played it on Board Game Arena. I have played it a few times. I played it like half a dozen times, not successfully, and I played a ton of solo games in the past few days. But the digital tool kind of helps. It helps because you can pause, you can take your time, you can highlight some of those conduits, and they'll literally say, this connects to this, it goes up instead of down. It kind of spells things out, and you can, of course, everyone gets a perfect view of the board, right?
That's what really unlocks this for me, is that zoomed out view, the highlighting the pipes and seeing exactly where things are going. That's what helps me internalize the rules. I'd still rather play this in person. It does have a lovely table presence, but just wrapping your head around that flow state basically is really tricky. So I do recommend playing it on Board Game Arena. There is a dedicated app as well that I've not tried. I don't know who the developer of that is, but it's like a dedicated Barrage app basically.
The nice thing about playing in person with friends, though, if they're good friends, is that when you place that power station in the wrong basin and then you realize it a turn later, they will let you move it. Like that's, if you're playing with good people, at least you get that. BGA it will not let you get away with that. No, yeah.
Good point. But also BGA will adjudicate the rules for you.
That's
so
right.
that you score. It'll tell you exactly what the valid placements are for pieces based on how many resources you have. It's a very helpful tool for a beginner, but that said, I did get screwed up attempting to learn this game on my own using that very same tool.
We're talking about scoring. Should we talk a little bit about some of the round bonuses and structure of that power generation track?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because this is probably the key thing about this game that, man, I feel like I'm being negative here, but this part of this game really frustrates me. It's so difficult. So the way this works, right, is that there's this track at the top of the board that has essentially it's tracking your power for the round. So every round, as you're generating power, you get to move this little token up higher and higher, or not, depending if you get any power generated at all. But depending on how high you get up there, you may get bonus points. You will get some extra money for the next round, depending on how you get up there. But each round there's kind of like a goal you're trying to achieve. So for example, in the first round of the game, the goal may be to build as many first level dams as you can, and so there'll be a little tile it's randomly set up at the beginning of the game, and if you can generate at least 6 power, then you're eligible for scoring that. But then you have to meet another threshold to kind of get it past a mark space. If you don't, then you deduct points. So even if you were to get 2 first level dams built, for example, that are worth 4 points each, if you don't get up to that threshold, you're going to lose 4 of those points. So maybe you get 4 points from that. I don't think I've ever scored any points in the first round of the game. Maybe not even the second round of the game. Like, it's so hard to do. And then at the end of the first round, after you score that, you take that first tile off. And now the threshold to score in the second round is higher. So you have to generate a certain amount of power, not only to be eligible, but to not get the negatives. And the negatives, are going to be, it's like minus 4 points for every threshold you don't get over to get to that point. And this is something that Luciani's done in several other games, including Darwin's Journey, I think is a great comparison here. But I think Darwin's Journey is such a great evolution on this, because in Barrage, it's so hard. It's so hard to get those things done. It's not exciting goals. It's kind of like they're just things you're going to be doing anyway. But
Sure.
to generate enough power just to get those 4, 8, or 12 points, it's so hard to do. Darwin's Journey, on the other hand, it's cool because like every round you've kind of got this boat that's moving along to keep up with this track, but it stays where it is at the end of the round. You're not resetting all the way. And so your goals change and you still have to keep progressing, but it's just not so hard to just do this thing.
You're not going back to London after every season. You're continuing on to the Galapagos. Right?
Yeah.
It's tough because as board gamers, we've been trained. We see a track, we want to go up the track. Whereas the hardest part in this game is knowing when to not generate energy, when spend a whole round just investing and building up your infrastructure to focus on the next round. And like sometimes this game is all about building up to one big production at the very end. In fact, because when you generate water, it can be worth anywhere from between 1 and 5 energy per water drop. And sometimes you can have a lot of little dams all generating a little bit of energy, or sometimes you can spend the whole game building up to just that one big 5. You'll have 3 drops behind this big dam and basically go up the whole track in one go. And it is tricky to know when to hold back and when to push forward on that track sometimes. It's incredibly punishing. It's satisfying when you nail it just right, especially when there's also that whole like majority, the person highest on the track will get some bonus points at the same time as well. So trying to thread that needle is tricky, but when you get it just right, it's incredibly satisfying.
This is one of the ways that this game, it's from 2019, so it's a relatively recent modern game. But it reminds me, it's a bit of a throwback at the same time. You Tim, you mentioned like kind of how you use the workers, multiple workers at a time, to kind of as a resource to activate, progressively more expensive actions. That reminded me of a really old game, 1999's Tikal. So sort of using your explorers as a currency, and the ratcheting expectation of the point bonus every round really reminds me of some of those punishing games we just talked about, your Agricolas, your Le Havre. It really punishes you the farther along you get. You better catch up. You better keep up with this ratcheting tension and better get good, or else you're going to be left behind in the dust. It's quite punishing for a novice learner.
Yeah. All that to be said, and as much as I was a bit negative about it, there's still a lot of fun and excitement in this game. Like there's still cool things that you're doing. You're building up all the time. You're pulling off this clever move. You're like, oh, I'm stuck. What am I going to do? Okay, I can take this one action, turn the wheel 2 times. I get all my things back, and I get to take 2 more build actions this time, and get in somebody else's way. Or somebody built above me and they've just thwarted my whole strategy, but I can just go ahead and build over here and then thwart their strategy, and then just take all the water that they were going to put on me and take full advantage of it. So there's a lot of cool ways to make it. Again, this game, I started playing it, I hated it, and then I kept playing it, and I even in the first game I kept playing it, and like, okay, I get it. This game's good. It's good. It's like it's cool when a game does
is you always need more of it. Like this game just leaves you wanting a little bit more each time, and
leaves you thirsty. Huh?
the thing for me, like comparing this to like Darwin's Journey and a bunch of other sort of modern Euros, that often have these different systems or mini games that are sort of interconnected. Like Darwin's Journey has you go up this track and it'll give you a bonus to go up this other track, and in some ways it can feel a little bit arbitrary. I do love Darwin's Journey, but with Barrage, everything comes down to this core system and the dams. Like that's the focus. You're building up these dams, and everything is in service to that mechanic, basically. And it's partly why I don't really like the expansion, because it's a distraction from that core mechanic. I want to build the dams, I want to generate the energy, and that core puzzle is so satisfying, so dynamic in the way it's constantly changing, and you're recalculating as everyone else, places their structures. That core puzzle is just very addictive to me.
Is it that's the Laywater expansion you're talking about,
That's
right?
the main one. Yeah, there are a bunch of maps and things. I've not tried the maps, but Leewater expansion. Have you tried that, Tim?
I have, yeah, and I felt exactly the same way. Like I played the Leewater expansion one time, and I almost didn't build anything on the main map. I just built those buildings, and I was very competitive. I think I took a second place on it. It's very close to first place on it too. And that was so frustrating to me because I didn't really get to play the main game that the rest of the players were doing. So yeah, I kind of feel that way. I did want to mention, since you mentioned the expansion, there's a great, this game is solid at 2 players, but it does feel a little bit less interactive at 2. There's a great expansion for this called Barrage Duel, and it does add a little bit tighter map, which is, definitely gives you that competition again, but it adds this cool little mini board that is little tracks that, as you do different goals on it, it pushes you one way or the other. So if you do a goal, it pushes you a certain direction. Your opponent does a goal, it pushes the marker back towards the center again.
Through a tug-of-war system.
Kind of a tug-of-war, and wherever you end with that particular goal in a round, you're going to get some bonuses, or your opponent will. And that was really fascinating. So just a little point there, if you want to try this 2 players, I would recommend checking that out because it's really solid.
I have played that, and it is quite satisfying. I really did enjoy that sort of tug-of-war. I'm reminded of another Euro game I can't quite bring to mind. But, I mean, at the same time, I also just like this game, the regular base game at 2 players. It's a little more open, a little more flexible. You're not getting in each other's way quite as much unless you want to do that. I do like both the dedicated duel and just regular 2-player game.
Yeah, maybe it's best at 2 players without that extra expansion and just keep it open. Let me play my own game and leave me alone.
It's always going to be more aggressive the more players you have, because I think the base game at least is always on the same map, and so the more people in there, the more you're going to be getting into this way, even inadvertently and accidentally. So yeah, I think that's going to affect your initial impressions perhaps a lot as well.
All right, guys, I think we've talked a good length about this game. I think we've carried a lot of water. We've had a tall drink, a long drink out of a tall glass, something like that. So I think maybe just a couple thoughts to wrap it up. I'll start us off. I have come to enjoy this game more. I found it really frustrating, really confusing, and really dry, despite the theme. The first few times I played it, maybe it's because Daniel made that terrible mistake and I ended up winning dramatically in the recent game I played with him. But I've also played a bunch of solo, and admittedly I haven't played with larger groups, except with some of the really deceptively prescient automa rules that BGA enables. And I've enjoyed some of that, just kind of the increased level of interaction. There's something fun about kind of like a pick up and deliver. And this is not a very typical pick up and deliver, but you still get that same kind of arc, right? You got something, you got to get it to the end point, and you score points off of it. You cycle and repeat. In that sense, it reminds me a little bit of another game like that called Great Western Trail. I think that game kind of achieves that sort of end with a little bit more colorful theme, a little bit more elegant rules. I like that one a little bit more. But there's something kind of fun and interesting about this game in like the mechanical simplicity of it. The math is there. It's a kind of a thinky type of game, and I think if you enjoy mastering a game and executing a tight rule set, you'll come to enjoy this. I've come to enjoy this quite a bit more, so I think it's worth checking out. But at this point in my experience, I don't really need expansions just yet. Just getting it around the base core of the rules, and there's a lot to chew on there.
Yeah, for me, I think Barrage is an exceptional heavy Euro, but you have to be ready for some interaction and for some interruptions to your strategy. And there aren't too many strategy games of this weight that allow for that much interaction. So I think it's going to be a super positive for some groups. And I have friends in my group that absolutely love it because of that. And then other friends that are absolutely frustrated by it because of that. I fall somewhere in the middle. I love going back to this game from time to time, but it's very hard to play. It's very hard to play well, not from the rules overhead perspective, but from just being able to get things done in the game. So if that sounds fun to you, I mean, listen, Barrage is great. I have not played a Luciani game that isn't solid, and this is high up there. It's a very, very good game, but it's a very unique fit in this Euro genre, I think.
Yeah, I've spoken a little bit about games, sort of more modern games, both video and board games, that have it's constant little mini dopamine hits of constantly throwing bonuses and exciting moments at you, and I really appreciating these games that slow down and make you work towards a goal, and like this sense of delayed gratification and build up and payoff. That tempo in here I really enjoy, and it's just the clockwork mechanism of that's constantly shifting and flowing to different areas of the board here. This is a real eye opener in terms of giving a game a deep chance and really getting into the rules and making sure I understand all the dynamics properly. I've just continued to like this game more and more every time I play.
Really cool. All right, that was a great discussion, guys. What do you think? I think we've gone a little long, but we probably have enough time for Tim, your guest of honor, if you want to cover your off-topic dessert course. You want to tell us about what non-gaming stuff is exciting you these days?
Well, this is truly a dessert course, and thanks for giving me just a minute to talk about it because I've been really enjoying it. I've been watching the second season of Peacemaker on HBO Max right now. This is based on a little side DC character from comic books, a character I wasn't even aware of before their, what's his name? James Gunn. It was the director of Guardians of the Galaxy, kind of the creator of that series. So if you like that irreverent humor and the quirky characters and kind of sci-fi silliness that Guardians of the Galaxy is, James Gunn has been hired to kind of rebuild the DC universe. And I think they tried him out with Suicide Squad. This was the second Suicide Squad movie. But one of the characters that got introduced in that movie was Peacemaker, and played by and I can't think of his name right now. Give me
John
one
Cena?
sec.
Cena, yeah.
Played by John Cena. And, John Cena is a big, goofy, charismatic actor, and he plays this part to perfection. But he was one of the, I don't know, more special parts about that movie. The movie was full of funny quirkiness, but somehow they gave him an entire show to his own. And when I read that they were going to do this, I was like, there's no way this is a hit. There's no way this works. This character is goofy. He's not very likable in the Suicide Squad movie at all. But anyway, they did make a Peacemaker series that came out about a year and a half ago or so, and I devoured it and I totally enjoyed it, and shockingly, it worked. Anyway, getting into season 2, have you guys watched this show first of all?
No, I haven't. I've been meaning to. I've heard great things. I've still not seen the actual Suicide Squad film either. So it's on my list to get to, but there's so many superhero things that I've kind of burnt out on, and I want to get to, but it's not that high on the priority list, to be honest.
Yeah, totally. I totally get it. But I think this actually is worth going after. I'd say ignore all the recent Marvel TV shows. There's some charm in some of those things, right? But this does feel just, if you want something that's kind of like acknowledges how silly costume superheroes are, Peacemaker does that perfectly. It has a nonsensical storyline. Forget about that. What you've got is some great characters, some hilarious dialogue, some pretty good scenes, and it was worth it. Here's what you need to do, actually, before you even think about whether you want to watch this. Go to YouTube and look up the Peacemaker intro and just watch the intro sequence for the show. And that will tell you whether this show is going to be something you want to check out. They kept that going in season 2. Season 2 has a equally like goofy storyline, but added some new characters that I'm just loving. Some great sequences. I'm not going to spoil anything, except if you have watched this, then you know what I'm talking about when I say bird blindness was one of the funniest things I've seen, one of the funniest scenes I've seen in a long time. You'll know it when you see it. Anyway, Peacemaker, I'm having a great time watching this. It's one of the rare TV shows that I can't wait to, as soon as the new episode comes out, I'm checking it out.
I did see Danielle Brooks is in that as well, who I really liked from Orange is the New Black. So that was another reason I've been meaning to check this out. Is it worth checking out the film first? Do you need to see the film?
I would say you probably don't need to, but I would recommend you do it. Because I think it does give you a little bit. There's actually a few characters that come from the film and show up in the series. So I would say, yeah, why not? You don't have to see anything else in the DC universe as far as I'm concerned. But go check out that Suicide Squad film. It is actually pretty funny, solid in a lot of ways, and it leads you into the show, and it's worth it.
Very cool. Well, if you allow me a very quick pivot, not the dessert I'd planned to. This is game related, but this last week I actually played a demo. As burnt out as I am of superheroes and like dark gritty superheroes, there's a demo called Dispatch. So this is from some of the makers of Tales from the Borderlands and Wolf Among Us, I think it's called, like the Telltale games. It's a new studio from some of those writers, and it's basically you're playing as it's almost like an ambulance dispatcher, but for superheroes. And so it is like a very much a narrative game, but you actually have the interface of the computer of these sort of crises popping up, and you have to like decide which superhero you're going to send to which. Like, there's a cat stuck in a tree, or there's a building on fire. Who are you going to send to what? So it's more game-like than some of those other more narrative Telltale games. But there was just a really strong sense of character in this. Like, you're basically given this group of six superheroes who are all like ex-villains who are trying to be rehabilitated. So it's basically like a group of juvenile delinquents, basically. But there's this immediately this sense of character, and this banter between them all. Like, they all know each other really well. You come in as this outsider trying to get to know them, and like, I just got to reach these kids. And yeah, I really enjoyed that. Incredibly vulgar, incredibly whip smart. Like, just the jokes are coming a mile a minute. But really great animation too. So the demo it gives a really strong first impression. That's coming out next month, I think, is like an episodic game. So I'm excited for Dispatch.
Cool. All right, I'm gonna do another left turn as well. This was not the planned topic, but since we were talking about games like Scythe, I have been watching a TV show recently. It's an anime, but it's based on a Western property. It's called Leviathan. I watched it on Netflix. I've been watching the first 3 episodes of this. And basically, this is based on a book that I had read by author Scott Westerfield. Westerfield is maybe more recently famous for his a book series Uglies, which has been also turned into a TV show. So basically, this show, based on Scott Westerfield's book of the same name, Leviathan, is Scythe, the animation. So this is a alternate history fiction taking place in roughly World War I period in Central Europe. All the same players are around: Austria-Hungary, Europe, England, France, Germany. But this time around, a strange historical event has occurred. Basically, Charles Darwin, which we mentioned before, invented genetic engineering in the 18th century, and
Darwin.
he's created these biological war beasts. And now a bunch of countries like the England and France utilize these, are called the Darwinist faction now, and they use these like floating methane generating jellyfish, and they fly around in these giant floating whales that have like tarpaulins and whatever canopies attached. And
Flying
they have
whales are hot in games
autoguns.
right now.
Yeah, exactly, like Mistwind or whatever. This European historical fiction meets fantasy elements will remind you a lot of like Ghibli films, like Porco Rosso, Castle in the Sky. So there's a lot to like here in this story. Also, it might remind you of the video game series Valkyria Chronicles, which is also kind of alternate history world wars with mechs and tanks. Oh, I forgot to mention that the other side, the Central European powers, Austria-Hungary and Germany, have walking mechanical tanks. So that's pretty darn exciting too. So basically, there's a lot to like in this series. I said it's a co-production between a Japanese animation studio and a Western production company. So kind of think of Cyberpunk Edge Runners or Star Wars Visions. And I mentioned Ghibli before. This show features music by longtime Studio Ghibli composer, collaborator Joe Hisaishi.
Ooh, very good.
So there's a lot of quality here. The characters are really endearing. Is a little bit of that, Shinji get in the damn mech sort of thing. But there's a lot to enjoy as well. Just kind of rousting, fun adventure, kind of over Central Europe. And if you ever wanted to see Scythe in animation form, this show's for you. So that's Leviathan on Netflix.
Very cool.
All right, and with that, I think that's a wrap, folks. 3 courses in the bag. Of course, I want to thank our special guest, Tim. Thank you so much for spending this time with us. I know you've had some technical challenges. Hope it all gets worked out before your next episode of your own show.
Thank you guys for having me on the show. Sorry for the technical issues. It's fun chatting with you though.
Yes, yeah. Thank you for joining us.
All right.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, guys.
Cheers.
Take
All
care.
right. And with that, we're going to let Tim go. Thanks a lot. I guess we should do our regular outro.
Yes, yeah. So we'll drop the link to Board Game Hot Takes in the show notes. Be sure to go and check that out. And yeah, so if you have any questions or comments for us or for Tim, you can contact us at omnigamersclub@gmail.com or at our website, omnigamers.club.
That's right. And you can catch our episodes on YouTube. We post our episodes up there every time they come out for you to watch in video form if you're not already subscribed there. If you want to listen to our older episodes, you can find those only on audio form on a podcatcher of your choosing. Of course, we put this show out free every week. We don't have any sponsors or ads, so we would love it if you could make an effort to share this with a friend. Tell someone you know who likes games of all stripes, and also just send us your feedback, comments. Love to hear it either on YouTube or podcast. Email works too, and Bluesky is great as well. You can catch me on Bluesky as Markyuasa, MARKYUASA at bsky.com. And Daniel?
You can find me at Bluesky at Board Game Feast and the Omnigamers Club account there as well. Yeah. Go to everyone cancelling the Disney account to listen to more podcasts, I guess.
That's right. I have cancelled my Disney account as well.
Likewise.
Unfortunately, I have a few months saved up, so I still got a chance to finish that famous anti-fascist TV show produced by that massive mega corporation.
I watched the last episode of Alien Earth before mine expires.
There
Excellent.
you go. That was a great conversation. I want to thank Tim again. Sorry for the technical difficulties. We love talking with you, though. All right. Until next time, to everyone out there listening, have a balanced diet of games.
Bye.
Bye.